everybody. It is a pleasure to have you with us tonight. We are Benjamin Parker, Simon Shortt, and Robertson Vire with you. This is kind of a combined effort between Fantom Sports and Sports and Money. You can catch us on both platforms, and you can catch us on Twitter. We are all over the place with all kinds of content, both written and visual and audio. We are on podcast. We are on YouTube. You name it. We have content all over the place. So Simon's up. First of all, Simon, how are you tonight, man?
Good, Ben. Good. Thanks for having us. Thanks for doing this again. We're excited to be here.
Yes, sir. For those of you who don't already know, Simon is a major Steelers fan. He does not hide that. He will not hide that. He will die that way. And, you know, we have a terrible talent in the background to authenticate that. Robertson Vire, how are you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing great. Glad to be here. Excited to get going.
Yes, sir. All right. And for those of you who don't know, Robertson writes for Fantom Sports, as does Simon. And let's get started. We're doing the AFC East tonight. Quick recap. Last year, the Bills had a very powerful team, finished 11-6, did very well in the playoffs, but certainly not as well as they wanted to. Stinging end. Patriots go 10-7. Dolphins 9-8, Jets 4-13. So we're going to go through each of those teams tonight, kind of get you a flavor of what's coming up. And man, I think it's three and a half months now till the start of the NFL season. We are already excited. I think it's less than 100 days now to the start of the season. So let's get started. The Buffalo Bills. Robertson, I'll start with you. They go 11-6 last year, and they're a pretty heavy Super Bowl favorite this year. Tell us a little bit about the Bills, why they may or may not have improved, and why you think they may or may not have a legit shot at the Super Bowl this year.
I think they do have a legit shot at the Super Bowl. I think they're the Super Bowl favorites coming out of the AFC. They do have a tough schedule, but just given like their opponents versus some of like the other, like especially the Chiefs, who are also, I think, what many consider would be co-favorites. I think their schedule is a little bit easier. I think they play in a little easier division. And also they had a pretty strong offseason. They had a strong draft. They made some very good acquisitions in free agency. They signed Tim Settle and Daquan Jones, who are going to be some good depth on the offensive line, bolstering that number one ranked defense from last year. They also signed Von Miller. That's kind of a huge deal, even though he's past his prime at this point in his career. It's still going to be a pretty big signing. So they also added O.J. Howard, another weapon for Josh Allen. And they also drafted James Cook, who I really loved coming out of Georgia. I think it was Georgia, yeah. Coming out of Georgia. I think he's going to really help the running game. I think he's going to take over the lead. He's going to be the lead dog pretty quickly, I think, just because they go by running back by committee in Buffalo, sort of. And I think he's a do-it-all type back. He can be. So I would be excited for him as a Bills fan. So, they retooled a little bit in certain areas that they needed to retool. And they were already 2 games away from the Super Bowl last year. So I think they're the favorites.
That's the way I see it. We have a fantastic Bills roster here who I think for the most part only improved. And again, there were a few pieces that left as well, but nothing major. To me, this is a roster that only improved. Robertson, I do want to ask you, though, sometimes you go into a season feeling like a certain team has momentum. They have a belief that maybe a lot of other NFL teams don't have. I think if any team has that this year, it's Buffalo. But how much stock do you put into that versus, say, the Chiefs, who they're kind of starting to hit the cap waters now? They're starting to catch on some burden of the heavier, higher end contracts versus the Buffaloes, who are still kind of light on that. And maybe they just feel like it's our turn this year. How much stock do you put into that for the Bills heading into this season?
You have to put some thought into it. You have to be confident, if you're the Bills and your ability to get to the Super Bowl this year. I mean, it seems a little far-fetched, going back a few years ago, even to say the Bills could be in the Super Bowl. It's kind of crazy, especially since Josh Allen struggled in his first couple of years. But they've built a very strong team around Josh Allen. They have a great coaching staff. Sean McDermott does very well. You have to believe in that, but you also have to be cautiously optimistic, even though they have what seems to be all the potential in the world. Just because they have a first place tough schedule, and it is tough. You just can't take anything for granted. Injuries could start piling up. There could be a number of things that can derail a team. So Could we see a step back from Josh Allen? I think it's improbable, but it's also possible. You do have to take everything with a grain of salt. So they should be optimistic, but you can't. It's not a guarantee, obviously.
It's an exciting offseason for Buffalo. I think the fans cannot wait for this year to get started and get this thing going again. I think they're so excited. I'm going to ask both of you, Simon first, about an over-under number, and that is 11.5. DraftKings, that's the latest number that I've seen from them. Of course, it fluctuates, but let's set it at 11.5 for now. And Simon, on the Bills, would you take the over or the under on that? And then go ahead and add in your 2 cents worth about a Super Bowl run here.
Oh, wow. 11.5. That's really, really high. Let me thumb back through their schedule real quick to see who they're playing. I mean, it's some tough divisions. It's the AFC North is in there. The NFC North is in there. I still think 11-6 last year could see some Josh Allen regression. The AFC got stronger. I'd probably say under, but not by much. I'm not expecting a huge regression from the team. But maybe we do see a slight step back in terms of regular season performance with a bigger eye on postseason success. So whatever that looks like, I mean, they're a little bit younger in some areas this year than they were last year. But I think just based on the rest of the AFC really getting better, and Buffalo didn't get worse by any means, but everyone kind of took a step forward. So that might cause Buffalo to just kind of stay the same or maybe take a slight step back when it comes to the regular season record this year.
Simon, real quick, we'll do a playoff video at some point in the future, weeks ahead. But Bills win the division, yes or no?
Yes.
And I don't think, that's basically what I'm hearing from everyone else as well. Robertson, do the Bills win the division? And how do you feel about the 11.5 over under?
The 11.5 is where it should be. I think just because, they did win 11 games last year and they did get better. So I feel like the 11.5 is where it should be. I'd be inclined to take the under, but I'm going to go over just because I think they can win that extra game, even though they do have a tougher schedule. I just think they're poised for a big year this year. Despite what I said earlier, I mean, you do have to be cautiously optimistic, but I do think they can win 12 games this year, and they do win the division.
I agree. I don't see any reason this team doesn't win the division. I'm going to take the over, if for no other reason than that they are playing 17 games now. So I think 12-5 is perfectly reasonable for this Bills team. So for those of you out there looking to place bets, don't take our word for it. This is what we think. I think 12-5 is perfectly reasonable. I think the Bills could get hot. I think they can go on a real streak this year. If they get started off right, I think they can go on a real streak and win a lot of games in a row, even with that tough schedule. Next team up, the New England Patriots. They're 10-7 last year. There was a point last year where the Patriots were even being talked about in the Super Bowl with a potential matchup against the Buccaneers. That kind of fizzled out as we got in the second half of the year, so that didn't happen. This is an interesting thing before we dive too deep into the Patriots. DraftKings has them at 8.5, and I didn't check the other sports books for win-loss over-under. That number kind of surprised me a little bit, to be honest. I don't figure the other sports books are too far off of that number. They might sit in at 8 or 9, but let's go with 8.5. Simon, how do you feel about the 8.5 number for the Patriots?
I think that's a great line. I think this is a team that's definitely primed for some regression. You take a look at not only the roster moves that happen and the players that they lost over the course of the offseason, but also look at the coaching changes that there's been. I mean, this team went from Josh McDaniels kind of running the entire offense to now Joe Judge and Matt Patricia seem to be running this offense. And if you remember the last time those guys were in New England, Joe Judge was the special teams coordinator and Matt Patricia was on the defensive side of the ball. So obviously those guys have become head coaches and all these guys can coach a number of different places. But the fact that, you lose Josh McDaniels, who's been there for this whole run really, and you replace them with those guys, and there's not an offensive coordinator named. So it's kind of who's leading the ship, who's guiding Mac Jones through these rough waters. Because remember last year, Mac Jones himself, while the team was doing well, he didn't start all that hot, right? And it just kind of took some time for them to figure out what the right offense was around him. And a lot of that was McDaniels. And now you're hoping that Joe Judge is going to do that. Remember, Joe Judge ran 2 QB sneaks in a row on 2nd and 3rd down inside the 5-yard line last year before punting the ball. So I don't know if that's the guy I want to put my offense. I don't know if that's the guy whose hands I want to put my offense in, and my young quarterback who is good, but it's not like he's playing with a lot of natural arm strength, arm talent, kind of physical gifts. So I think 8.5 is the right number. I still, even with all that said, I wouldn't go under. I'm not going to bet that Belichick has a losing season. But I think that 8.5 is about right. And I don't think this team gets to 10 wins again.
Simon, I didn't plan this, but I am going to camp right here on this because it's so fascinating. I have a huge amount of respect for Bill Belichick and his intellect. But if his design this year to the path to winning is to simply confuse everybody else as to what the heck they're doing this year in New England, I think he's going to be very successful because there seem to be a lot of people who don't know what the heck he's doing in New England this year. And it almost feels like the media and the rest of the NFL is just kind of sitting around, not laughing, but just kind of stunned a little bit. You saw the first round draft pick with Strange, the offensive lineman that surprised everybody. And then you mentioned bringing Joe Judge in and then Matt Patricia, who has been very strong on the defensive side of the football. I'm sure there's a lot of brain power there in New England, but it seems to be a lot of interesting moves this offseason, to say the least. Isn't that right, Simon?
Yeah, absolutely. If Troy Brown and Jerome Mayo put up their headsets and put some cleats on this year, I won't be surprised. I mean, I think the thing that's so fascinating, and actually, I think this is a player that might come up later. I'm not sure. But like looking at players from New England who do really well in New England and then leave and then they aren't as good, right? So like Kyle Van Noy is a guy going to the Chargers who has left before. He went to Miami and then came back, was bad in Miami, was good again for the Patriots. Trent Brown, their right tackle, he went to the Raiders, signed a big 4 or 5 year deal, and then after a year and a half was gone and is now back in New England doing well. So there's something in the waters up there. I don't know if it's the lobster roll or something. Oh, no, that's Maine. My bad. The clam chowder maybe is doing its thing. But it's, I don't know. There's weird stuff just always happening. And again, it usually works out. So you can't blame them. But again, we've given them the benefit of doubt in a lot of areas, right? We see the wide receivers always not work out no matter what. And I think we finally, as fans or as media, have said, maybe Belichick's just not good with wide receivers. And we finally accepted that. So now maybe we have to wonder, how good is he at putting a staff together? Because it really, he's had these certain guys there for so long. And as those guys have left over the last couple of years, whether it's positional coaches or assistant head coaches or some guys in the front office, some guys that have been Belichick staffers for, this whole era, we haven't really seen a lot of great upcoming talent really come up next. And now he's recycling failed coaches as well as players. So yeah, weird stuff is happening. That's for sure.
All true, all valid questions. And certainly that's why we're going to watch all the games this next season, because it's all fascinating. Robertson, I want to ask a question specifically, and you can talk about anything you want to with the Patriots, but specifically, let's start off with Matt Jones. That 8.5 number, it's just kind of a weak number that kind of surprises you to see with the Patriots. In spite of the Patriots winning a lot of games last year with Matt Jones, it certainly seemed like Matt Jones has his limits. So how much of that line that we're seeing is Vegas sports books looking at Matt Jones and kind of seeing that he's a little bit limited and defenses are going to be able to capitalize on that?
Well, what Vegas did was, okay, prove it. They just said, put up or shut up. So I think this is Mac Jones is the quarterback that is most likely for a sophomore slump. And it just kind of alludes back to what everything that Simon said. Everything weird is going on in New England. You have Matt Patricia and Joe Judge calling plays. The players are literally coming out saying, we don't know what's going on here. Like when they're voicing concerns in May in OTAs, that's a problem.
Right.
I know it's Bill Belichick, but that's a problem. When you draft a guy in the first round that Sean McVay thought he could get in the third round legitimately, yes, whether that was a joke or not. But if that was true that he thought he could get him in the third round, That's also a problem. Also, when you draft a quarterback, and I understand you need to develop quarterbacks and stuff, you need to draft another quarterback in the 4th round. That's a little high for a developmental guy. I mean, they drafted Bailey Zappi in the 4th round. I know it's Bailey Zappi, but I mean, what is going on? They have 2 quality backups, and Brian Hoyer, and isn't Jared Stidham still there, I believe? So
I'm a little behind on where Stidham is, to be honest, and I apologize.
yeah, I want to say,
so sorry. I don't know. I'm not up on the latest Jared Stidham conversations.
I want to say actually he got traded recently, but I'm not 100% sure.
I'll get IT on this real quick.
Yeah.
Thank you, Simon.
Sorry, that's a Ryan Russillo reference. I was talking about Boston earlier. That's what that just made me think of.
Yes.
No, but 8.5 is, I think it's a proper line. I think they got it right on that one. I would actually take the under, just because I feel like Pats fans are going to get some Bill Belichick, fatigue, just because he's tried so many weird things that haven't necessarily worked out in the past, and now this is really weird. And I have a question for you two. If, just say the Patriots do go 8-9. Is Belichick on the hot seat or being forced out the door to retire? Maybe. I mean,
it's an interesting question. For me personally, no. I only because I don't think there's a long list of NFL head coaching candidates that everybody's clamoring to get. That would really be the only reason. Not to mention all the Super Bowls that he's won. So for me, no. For me, it would take something catastrophic for them to push him out the door. Simon, what do you think?
Yeah, no, because this is the game is all about kind of setting the standard, right? And it's a copycat league, so you don't want to be the team that has to constantly always copycat somebody. So if you have the standard as the head coach in Bill Belichick, you don't give that guy up, because what's going to happen is all you're going to do is piss him off. He's going to go to some crap team. He's going to go to the Carolina Panthers next year. He's going to go to the Miami Dolphins not Miami Dolphins. They just got a guy. But you know what I'm saying? He's going to pull a Tom Brady. He's going to leave New England. He's going to win a Super Bowl. And then the Craps would be looking around, holding their whats and saying, whoops, what did we just do? And you don't want to be the organization that fired Bill Belichick in Boston. That would not be good. Yes, Jared Stidham, traded by the Patriots for a 2023 7th-round pick to the Raiders. So good call on that, Robertson.
Watch out, Derek Carr.
Yeah. I had one last thing about how weird they were being, but let's see if I can even think of it again. No, probably not. I think we covered all the weird stuff. Just weird.
It's gone. It can come back later. That's all right, Simon. We appreciate the effort.
It'll be just as weird later on. I'm sure it'll make just as much sense. So it's fine. No big deal.
Let's talk about the Dolphins, who I think are just as equally fascinating. 9-8 last year, but the guy who did a lot of that work is gone, and Brian Flores. Apparently for no other reason than that he just couldn't get along with the owner and the general manager. So a bit of a power struggle there. And I don't think Flores likes to play corporate games. Sometimes he's not very nice in the sandbox with other people. And he's gone. So in spite of the fact that I thought he did more with the roster than a lot of coaches would have done, he's out. The Dolphins have added a lot of pieces this year. Will that pay off down the road? We'll see. But for this year, the DraftKings has them sitting at 9 wins again this year, even though Flores is gone, because they added Tyreek Hill. They added a big tackle whose name is escaping me at the moment. They added a couple of other pieces. Simon, let's start with you. Dolphins here, 9-8 last year, 9 wins over under. What do you think?
I think it's hard to say. Did you say 9 or 9.5?
They've got them at 9 the last I saw. Yeah.
I mean, I guess same thing either way. That was a dumb question. It's hard to say. I mean, you can't say over. This is not a double-digit win team.
Right.
But I do like what they did this offseason. And you're right on the money with Flores. With the way this team was built over the last couple of years, I don't think many coaches were going to get more out of them than what he did. This team was an stayed at an average defense last year, which was really impressive considering they were a top defense in the league 2 years ago, but they had outstanding turnover numbers, right? They led the league in interceptions 2 years ago. They regressed to the mean a little bit, and they stayed an average defense despite not having all the top talent when it came to defense. Now you have to think that's probably gone, right? That was all him. So now if that defense takes a step back, and then let's say optimistically they're still top 20, what I really like is they went super modern with their offseason, and they really just loaded up on this offense. They added two players to the offensive line, Teron Armstead and Connor Williams. They obviously add Tyreek Hill, add running backs Chase Edmonds and Raheem Mostert. And then even in the draft with only a couple picks, I like the linebacker Channing Tindall that they got. The other picks, TBD. I don't love getting a receiver. I felt like they could have done something else on defense, but I liked everything they did. I think they have a clear focus on, and this is what I like from teams. We have a young quarterback and one that is admittedly struggling. So we're going to try to do everything we can to help him improve him, either the guy or not the guy, but do it quickly by putting the right team around him. They hire Mike McDaniel from San Francisco. So if any coach is probably going to get the best out of him, it could be him. Put a good run game together. And, when all else fails, they went and got the one of the best backup quarterbacks in the league, and one of the best backup quarterbacks that's taking a young guy's job, and that's Teddy Bridgewater. So I really like everything they did. I'm not quite bullish enough, especially because I don't know how many starts he's going to get, and if he can get you to 10 wins.
Robertson, talk to us a little bit about the Dolphins. I guess more specifically, what I'd like to know is, do they have a legit shot at the playoffs this year, especially considering what we already know about the AFC North and the AFC West, which are both brutal divisions. Those two divisions could get three teams in the playoffs each, conceivably. And then we already know about the Buffalo Bills. Not three teams each, but it's possible three teams from either division could get in the playoffs. And then the Buffalo Bills, we already think, are in the playoffs. So what are the Dolphins, even if they have a decent season, Robertson, what are the chances they actually get in the playoffs here?
They're pretty slim. But if you told me they had this team last year, like the same team last year, they would have been in the playoffs for sure. Maybe I'm more bullish on Tua than I should be, but I just find it hard to believe that, coming out of the draft, they're like, oh, well, he doesn't have the strongest arm, but he's like really good in other areas. He's mobile. He's, there was injury concerns, but, his ability to read defenses, his precision passing, all this stuff. And now ever since he's gotten into the league, ever since he's put on an NFL uniform, he has a noodle arm. He can't do anything. It's like, well, you guys knew that when you drafted him. So you can't complain about something that you already knew about and you just did it anyway. So you're just going to have to live with it. And I think they've put around a very good team with him. I think he can have a very good year. I think he can have a year that people aren't expecting. And they could have the opportunity to have a very explosive offense. So I think it's slim that they make the playoffs, but I think it's possible. It's going to be very tough. Like you said, Ben, with the AFC North and the AFC West. But I think there is going to be a surprise team this year that's going to be in contention for one of those wildcard spots, or a team that's going to push the Bills, not threaten them, but push them. And I think that could very well be the Miami Dolphins.
I'm going to come in with some scorching hot takes here on the Dolphins, and I'm not usually a hot take guy. And you guys can either give me a reaction or no reaction. That's fine. For me personally, I think they let go of the wrong guy when they let go of Brian Flores. I think they should have kept him. I think Chris Greer, the general manager, should have been the guy to let go. I think they drafted the wrong quarterback a couple of seasons ago when they drafted Tua instead of Herbert. I think these are mistakes. Now, to their credit, what you guys have already mentioned, they've tried at least to give Tua a chance this season by packing a whole bunch of offensive stuff around him. And that's something we're seeing other NFL teams not do with their young quarterbacks to their own failure, I think. But, we'll see what it is with the Dolphins this year. But, I don't see this ending well for the Dolphins in 2 seasons. I'll put it that way. Maybe they hang around 500 this year. Maybe they get in the playoffs. But I don't see this ending well for Miami. It just doesn't pass the test when I look at it. Any reaction?
That wasn't very hot, Ben. So let me bring you a hot take because I think everything you said was really smart. So sorry, you're too smart to give a hot take. Let me dumb it up for you a little bit. Do we see Teddy Bridgewater start by week 6? All right.
No.
So the first 4 games, I would say no too. But here are the first 4 games that the Miami Dolphins play this year: New England Patriots, Baltimore Ravens, Buffalo Bills, Cincinnati Bengals. There's a real chance that's an 0-4 start. And then they follow up with the New York Jets, who we'll talk about here in a minute, but I think are going to be a pretty feisty team this year. You want to talk about teams that are doing everything they can for their young quarterback. I think the Jets are in that camp. If this team goes 0-4, which it conceivably could against those teams, and then they don't have a good game against the Jets, or Tua looks bad against the Jets, and they barely escape with a win, or Zach Wilson completely outclasses them, and this team is 0-5, I think we could see Teddy by week 6, because they don't want to be the team when Flores leaves and says all this stuff about what their culture is and what they're trying to do, and then they go 0-5 as soon as he leaves. That's not a good look for them. So is that when we could see, Teddy Two Gloves kind of make his appearance? And that's a little bit of a hot take, but it's also, I think, conceivable. I think there's a real chance of that.
It's interesting. Robertson, go ahead and jump on it, and then I'll add my 2 cents worth, Matt.
Simon, if that scenario plays out, then yeah, conceivably you'll see Teddy Two Gloves at halftime. After halftime, coming out in the third quarter. But I don't think that's going to happen. I am bullish on the Dolphins. I do believe in Tua, and I don't believe he can be a top 10 quarterback, but I think he could be a top half of the league quarterback. I believe that's his ceiling, given his limitations with the arm strength. But I just really like everything they've done. I don't know how Mike McDaniel is going to be as a head coach, but as a play caller, he's going to be pretty good, and I think that's going to help Tua a lot. I think there is a high possibility as well that they do exactly what you said, go 0-4 to start. It's not going to look good for Tua, but I think that's more likely that Tua kind of starts to turn a corner this year. I'll say that.
I'll throw in my 2 cents worth. I think Chris Greer has pretty much staked his reputation and his Dolphins GM job on Tua. I don't think they take him out, except Tua gets banged up a lot. So it wouldn't surprise me, just for injury's sake, if they're struggling as well, if Bridgewater doesn't get in at some point sooner rather than later. That wouldn't surprise me. The New York Jets, 4-13 last year. They looked horrible doing it. I'm really not sure how they got to 4 wins, to be honest. This was easily one of the worst teams in football. We'll talk about that more in another broadcast here. 4-13 last year, but they had a good draft by all accounts. Most people liked the draft because they seem to have a lot of high picks and seem to do some common sense things with those picks. And then there's some hope there that Zach Wilson can improve too. So Robertson, let's stick with you here. The Jets 4-13. DraftKings, the last I saw, had them at over/under 5.5 wins. How do you feel about that? Do we continue to see one of the worst football teams in the league, or do you start to see some trending upward here?
I think you're going to see some trending upward, even though it might not reflect in the schedule or in the win-loss record. If I told you at the beginning of the offseason that the Jets are going to draft arguably the best corner, arguably the best receiver, arguably a top 3 pass rusher, and arguably the best running back, which are all pretty prime positions and skill positions that are crucial for a team, performing well, you would say, oh yeah, the Jets are going to be a much improved team. And I think that's what they're going to be, even if the win-loss record doesn't reflect that. I think Zach Wilson's going to take a step forward. I think the defense is going to take a step forward in some important areas. So I like which I can't believe I'm saying this. I like what the Jets are doing, and I like Robert Saleh as a coach. I do. So I'd be optimistic for improvement. Maybe not in the win column, but you're definitely going to see improvement from the players and all that.
I like what you're saying there, and I think your point is well taken. It's not unusual in football. It's very unusual in any other sport, but it's not unusual in football to see a team improve and it not reflect in the win-loss column. It's a weird way that football works, but it's just a fact of life in football, both college and the NFL. The Jets could improve. Zach Wilson could improve, and they might not have a much better record. But again, they looked so horrible last year. I'm still not sure how they got to that four wins, to be honest. Simon, for you, the Jets, any chance they finish higher than fourth in the division this year? Any chance they get over that 5.5 wins this year?
No. Injuries aside, obviously, right? But I'm with Robertson. I think this team is going to look better. I actually do like that over the 5.5. I think this could be a 6-win team, maybe even a 7-win team. I went back and this is gonna give you guys insight into who I am as a person. I went back recently and watched that Week 1 Jets-Panthers matchup from last season. I know. Anyways,
you're dedicated.
We know you're a nerd. We already knew you were a nerd, Simon. Okay.
You're dedicated.
Evidence.
Anyway, that was the only game left tackle Mekhi Becton played last year. Zach Wilson looked pretty good. He had time. He was able to move around. He was able to look downfield for stuff. He was able to not, have to drift back a whole lot. Not saying he doesn't have those natural tendencies even with good protection, but that was the only game Mekhi Becton played, and I don't think it's a coincidence that he actually looked pretty good. Now, not only is Becton back, but they found, George Fant as a quality tackle as well. He's going to be on the right side. Elijah Vera-Tucker had a really good year as a rookie guard. He should be only better this year. And they added Laken Tomlinson from the 49ers. So I think in terms of helping out Zach Wilson and making that offense look better, they're doing it with the offensive line. And like Robert said, they also are adding to the skill players, Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall. And then unlike Miami, they're also giving that same level of investment to the defense. So Sauce Gardner is there. They went and got DJ Reed from Seattle. They did lose Marcus May, the safety, but they did add, Michael Clemens, who is an edge rusher as well, Jermaine Johnson, obviously, as we mentioned. So they're adding both. Oh, and Jordan Whitehead, the safety from the Bucs. So they're adding to both the offense and the defense, just solid players. And that's what you need first. So I do think that 5.5, they can go over that for sure. It's still probably not going to be good enough to get them out of the basement of the AFC East, but it's a good building block. It's a good place to be here too for Zach Wilson.
I agree with what you guys are saying. And this is going to sound a little crazy. If I'm a Jets fan, long term, not in this year, but long term, I feel happier, I think, than if I'm a Dolphins fan. I like what the front office is doing there in New York. They're not perfect. Nobody is. Not all of these picks are going to pan out, of course. But I like what they're doing. They seem to be doing a lot of just good, solid things. It doesn't seem to be weird or wacky or crazy or anything. They seem to be building and growing. And it may not show up this year, but I think in 23, 24, and 25, I think we're going to see the Jets move back on up toward that mid-level, fight for playoff spots. And I think it's just going to come down to the quarterback spot, how good they can be. But I think the days of seeing the Jets be pathetic, I think we're going to see a break from that for the next few seasons. So I like what the Jets are doing here. We've already heard from both of you guys on the Bills finishing first, and I agree. Give me the order after that. Robertson, who comes after that, and take us all through the rest of the three teams.
I'm going to be boring here. It's not going to be any hot takes. It's going to be the same as last year. Bills, Pats, Dolphins, and then Jets. The Jets, like you said, now that you're talking more about the Dolphins, I'm kind of like pulling back a little bit. I still think they can have a very good year. But, we could see the Jets make a jump there. If what you guys are saying about the Dolphins is true, if that comes to fruition, then, yeah, I think the Jets would leapfrog them. But I don't think it's likely. I think it's still going to be the same order as last year. Bills, Pats, Dolphins, Jets.
I think that makes a ton of sense, especially what we're talking about with the Jets and Dolphins. I do think the Dolphins have a decent year. I just don't like them for future stuff. I don't, it may be a little bit of fool's gold this year if they look good. I don't really see that moving forward. Simon, what's your after the Bills, what's your next level of three teams?
I said all that about Tua and the 0-4 start and Teddy Bridgewater. I think they're going to end up with a better record than the Patriots. I do think that there's definitely a world where that happens, and it's because of everything they did do in this offseason is brilliant, other than, letting Flores walk. And yeah, that defense is going to take a step back. But you add to the offensive line, you add skill players, you're in a good position to have a good quarterback play. Now, if it's Tua, because the whole thing with Tua is he was great at Alabama where he had an awesome situation, awesome offensive line, awesome skill guys. He hasn't had that these 2 years. So his skill level isn't great enough to overcompensate for that. Now, his talent around him might fit better with that level of play he's at. Or if by week 5 or 6, Teddy Bridgewater is playing, that's great talent for a guy like Teddy Bridgewater. So I think I'm going to say Miami actually ends up finishing second, with the Patriots finishing third, Bills winning the division, Jets coming in, rounding it out at 4.
That makes a lot of sense to me. I think we're kind of united on the Jets at the bottom, Bills at the top, and there's some question between the Patriots and the Dolphins who's actually going to end up maybe taking that second spot and maybe having a quick glimpse at the playoffs possibly, because we all know the injuries are going to hit some of these teams at some point, so it might open the door for a Patriots team or a Dolphins team to slip in and catch the playoff spot. All right, I'll give you guys a chance to kind of tell people where they can find you. We may not do this every video, but we'll do it right now. Simon, go ahead and tell people where they can find you if they want more of your stuff.
So you can start by following me at Simon_Shortt on Twitter. You can see all my written work on fantomsportsofficial.com. You can check out my YouTube videos here on Sports and Money Pro Football GM. And you can go and listen to my podcast, which is the Simon Shortt podcast on Apple and Spotify.
Robertson, tell everybody if they want some more of your content, where they can find you at.
Well, I don't have as much as Simon, so but they can follow me on. Yeah, you're right.
You just have a life, man. You have a life. That's all.
Yes.
I watch Panthers Jets week 1 in the middle of my summer. So
yeah, okay. You got a point there. You got a point. You're dedicated to the craft. We'll say that. You're dedicated.
That's a nice way to say it. Yeah.
They can follow me on Twitter, RELVIAR 99 on Twitter. Catch some of the videos we've been doing on Fantom Sports YouTube page, also on Sports and Money, sorry, Ben, help me out here.
My names are way too long, man. I need new names. I'm just too darn lazy to come up with new names.
It took me 10 episodes to remember also, so don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it.
But yeah, also you can catch my articles on fantomsportsofficial.com.
All right, everybody, thank you so much for watching. We got tons of more content. We're about to do 2 more videos right now. So by all means, check us out on all these different platforms. We'll tell you more about that in the future. But this has been the AFC East. I'm going to step over here and turn the camera off. But y'all have a great night. Thanks so much, everybody. Goodbye.